Ja, men jag säger välkomna tillbaka. Jag heter Gunnar Vrede och modererar den här förmiddagen med aktiespararna i Lund den 9 oktober. Och jag säger välkommen till Søren Bregenholt som är vd på Alligator Bioscience. Välkommen.
God morgen og tak. So it's a pleasure being here this Monday morning. A fantastic way to start the week. So Alligator Bioscience, a antibody-based immune oncology company located here in Lund. Our lead asset, mitazalimab, is in phase 2 clinical development. And today I'll share with you some of the recent data that we released only a couple of weeks ago. And then I'll talk a little bit about the future of mitazalimab and also the next wave of innovation coming out of our labs here in Lund. So our pipeline is deep. It's best-in-class molecules we are working with, agonistic antibodies, both monoclonal and bispecifics. And in addition to that, we have a number of underlying technologies that will allow us to continue to discover and develop innovative drugs in the future. We are listed at Nasdaq in Stockholm. As you can see here, the pipeline covers everything from discovery projects, preclinical projects, and all the way up to phase 2 clinical programs. Most of these antibodies are proprietary to Alligator, and a number of them are also out-licensed. We have licensing agreements on phase 2 programs, co-development on some of our phase 1 programs, and we also have preclinical programs that are licensed by, for instance, Orion in Finland. But today we will focus on mitazalimab, the furthest advanced program, and you can see that circled in green in the slide here. So mitazalimab is a so-called anti-CD40 antibody that has a number of functions. The key mechanism of action is that it activates the immune system. These cells we have here in orange and gray, really educating, attracting and activating T cells that allows the immune system to eradicate the tumors in certain cancer indications. Optimize 1 is designed to be extremely efficacious and at the same time extremely safe or very safe, and allowing mitazalimab therefore to be combined with chemotherapies that are often associated with strong side effect profiles. So mitazalimab has orphan drug indication in pancreatic cancer, both in the US and in the European Union, giving strong market exclusivities and also financial advantages as we develop the program. And mitazalimab is currently in first line in a phase 2 study in first line pancreatic cancer in combination with chemotherapy. And why have we decided to go into pancreatic cancer? First and foremost, because the science of mitazalimab and the immune system in pancreatic cancer fits so nicely together. So what we know from literatures, from in vivo studies in humans and also preclinical studies, is that when you activate CD40 on the immune system, it activates the so-called dendritic cells to activate T cells. It activates so-called macrophages to skew the immune system to be much more inflammatory than you normally see in tumors, so keeping a positive immune attack cycle going on in the tumors. And then finally, CD40 antibody also starts modulating the tumor microenvironment and the tumor stroma in a way making the tumor much more permeable both to chemotherapy and to subsequent immune therapy, and also to eventually infiltration of T cells. So when we look at it biologically, we have a drug and a number of mechanisms that fits perfectly well with pancreatic cancer. And as you see from this slide, pancreatic cancer is a disease that has a significant unmet medical need. The 5-year survival rate of patients with pancreatic cancer is about 10%. And if you look at the patients that we are treating, patients with metastatic pancreatic cancer, we see patients only surviving the 5-year survival rate of these patients is around 1 to 3%. So here there is really a lot of difference to be made for these patients. Only approximately 20% of the patients can have surgery, so you have 80% of the patients that are left with only chemotherapy. And what has happened over the last 12 months is that the frontline chemotherapy regime is shifting. It's shifting towards a therapy called FOLFIRINOX. It is the most efficacious therapy, but it's also the therapy with the biggest side effects. Therefore, it's extremely important that you have a drug that is efficacious, but also very safe. And in that niche, mitazalimab fits in very nicely. And therefore, in our phase 2 study, we are combining with FOLFIRINOX. Many other companies in pancreatic cancer is combining with other chemotherapies that are less efficacious, have lesser side effect. But as I said, what we see in the market is that the clinical practice is moving towards FOLFIRINOX. Therefore, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, continuously increasing the market opportunity for mitazalimab. Just very briefly, mitazalimab is tested in this first-line pancreatic cancer study, where we have tested 2 doses of mitazalimab in combination with FOLFIRINOX. We have shown that the 900 microgram dose is safe, and over the last 2 years, we have continuously enrolled patients in our study. We passed a number of milestones as we have communicated to you and the rest of the market. In the first quarter this year, we announced that the study was fully enrolled and that we will come out with the top-line data from the study in early Q1 or early Q1 next year, 2024. And I think we can say that early Q1 is sometime during January. We are pretty certain that we will deliver on this milestone as we have delivered on all the milestones that we promised the market so far. So when we look at the data from these patients and bear in mind that the current therapies, approximately only 1/3 of the patients actually have a clinical response from chemotherapy alone, and that only gives them approximately a median overall survival of approximately 11 months. So when we look on the data that we put out in June, some early interim data on the full cohort, we can see, if you look at the left-hand graph on the top, that we have patients that have now been on the drug for more than a year. We have patients that are getting close to having been on mitazalimab and chemotherapy for more than 2 years. This is remarkable in the sense that patients normally get switched out of FOLFIRINOX after approximately 6 months because the clinical benefits and the side effect disadvantages start to get in a balance that is no longer sustainable for continued treatment. But here we see an ability to continue to keep patients on this combination, and we see we continue to provide clinical benefit for these patients. And I can tell you the treating physicians in the trial are very, very enthusiastic about mitazalimab. And if you look at the right side of the trial, we have a so-called waterfall plot showing the best clinical response in terms of how much the tumor have actually been reduced after chemotherapy and FOLFIRINOX. And without going into too much details, I think we can all see on on the furthest right-hand side of the graph here, that we have a number of patients where the primary tumor or the primary metastasis has, and in this case liver metastasis, have actually disappeared, so-called complete responders. So the cancer has actually gone away from the liver. This is extremely seldom that this happens, if it ever happens, with chemotherapy alone. And these data, together with the fact that we have patients that are staying a long time on treatment, really sort of bodes well for the top line data that we will read out in January next year. If we look at the number of patients that responds to treatment, we of course have an ambition to treat more patients or give a clinical response to more patients and give a better clinical response to these patients than the current therapies. So when we look at what you can expect from chemotherapy alone, you have approximately 30% of the patients that responds to treatment. We can see that when we add mitazalimab on top of this, we get at least 45%. We've seen in the cohort that is most advanced that we have a response rate well above 50, and we definitely expect that this number 45 will increase significantly when we read out the data in January. We put another measurement in here, that is the so-called durability of response, duration of response. So from the patient see a clinical response until the tumor starts to grow again, how long is that? And you can see in the light green bar that for chemotherapy, for FOLFIRINOX, that is less than 6 months, and we can see in the interim data so far, so the immature data, that we at least have 8.7 months. And of course, that we expect that there is a correlation between how long the tumor is reduced in size and the overall survival rate of the patients. So when we take this data together and we take the very benign safety profile, tolerability profile of mitazalimab, these data strongly favor the continued development of mitazalimab beyond this phase 2A study. And the big question is, of course, whether Alligator is doing that together with a partner or potentially trying to do that ourselves. The current hypothesis is that we will license mitazalimab to a pharma company after phase 2, a company that is able to not only develop mitazalimab in pancreatic cancer, but also in a number of the other indications that lend itself to a molecule like mitazalimab. So how big is the commercial opportunity in first-line pancreatic cancer? You can, of course, calculate this in a number of ways, but if we take a conservative look at the patients that are diagnosed in the US and Europe every year, take the number of patients that are actually treated in first line and take a number of other sort of diminishing parameters, we can see that we have approximately 27,000 patients in US and the EU5 that will be treated with mitazalimab every year. And we think that gives an unencumbered market potential of approximately $1.8 billion US. And then, of course, beyond that, there is a number of opportunities to develop mitazalimab in other indications than pancreatic cancer. So what's going on right now in mitazalimab? We are working very dedicated to finalize OPTIMIZE-1 to be able to deliver data in January. We are engaging in multiple dialogues with the Food and Drug Administration in the US. And we are also, as we've alluded to before, started to invest in making mitazalimab ready for phase 3, manufacturing, development, and other activities to ensure that we can move the molecule as fast as possible into phase 3 after positive phase 2 data in January. And as I said, we are very, very encouraged by the data and optimistic about how how the data will come out in January. So the world doesn't stop with mitazalimab, but we believe that the mechanism of action that we see in CD40 agonist is worthwhile continue to innovate on. Therefore, we have developed Neo-X-Prime, which we see as the next wave of innovation. So an enhanced version of a CD40 agonist that gives better responses, more tumor-directed immunity, and also a built-in safety profile that is even better than mitazalimab. And currently, we have a number of molecules in the pipeline. The furthest advanced we call 4066, where we are ready to start taking that molecule into so-called IND-enabling activities to allow us to start phase 1 clinical development within the years to come. So if we look at Alligator from a little bit above, summarizing what we talked about here today, so we are a mid-stage clinical development company. We have a strong expertise profile in CD40, which we use both in mitazalimab and in our Neo-X-Prime platform, as we just discussed. We have quite a number of additional opportunities in the pipeline, including collaborations in phase 2 and in phase 1, and together with our highly differentiated technology profiles, we believe that this gives a significant optionality in the company, allowing us to continue to build shareholder values in the years to come. So with that word, I'll thank you for your attention, and I'm sure that there is a couple of questions here.
There are a few questions here. Before I start, I would like to just translate for you if you, by chance, om ni inte råkar veta vad pancreatic cancer är, så är det alltså bukspottkörtelcancer. So that said. Yes, your drug is supposed to work in combination with chemotherapy.
Yeah.
Yes. So I wonder, the point of this is the chemotherapy has side effects. Mm-hmm. Will your drug mean that you have to address less chemotherapy to the patient?
I think that is a very, very good question. You can say in the current trial, the treating physicians are allowed to modify the chemotherapy actually, and they do that normally to ensure that you have the right efficacy and effect of the treatment, but you make the life livable, so to speak, for the patients. And what we've seen in the trial is that with mitazalimab added to chemotherapy, it gives the treating physicians a lot more freedom to dial down some of the chemotherapy components to keep the patient staying longer. As I said, we have patients that have now been on study drug for mitazalimab and chemotherapy for more than 2 years. Normally, they would cycle out of FOLFIRINOX after 6 months. So that is definitely a valid point you make there, and an important point.
Okay, that's said. And then as you said, you expect data from the phase 2 study in January.
Yeah.
Yes, and we're looking forward to that. I also read in your various press releases that you have orphan drug status in both USA and EU now. Orphan drug status is särläkemedel status. Yeah. I don't think that pancreatic cancer is a very rare disease. So how did you get orphan status?
Oh, it is a rare disease. It qualifies well.
It qualifies well?
Yeah.
All right,
there are not that many patients. So
okay.
Yes.
Okay, and what does it mean that you have orphan drug status?
It means in the EU you get 10 years market exclusivity for your molecule if you are first to market. That's why speed means a lot. In US that is 7 years. Then you have in the US some tax incentives for relevant investment in relevant clinical trials, and then you have somewhat better access to the regulators in both geographies. Yeah.
Some argue it's a fast lane Is it?
It's not a fast lane per se. There you need fast track status, but there is of course a recognition of the data by the regulatory authorities that you have proven that there is a good argument for your drug or a good basis for your drug that it should work in a small disease with a high unmet medical need. There's a few other steps that need to be taken until you can make that a fast track, so to speak. And of course, that's part of our dialogue with the regulators.
All right. In the end of March this year, you announced a rights issue of about 200 million Swedish kronor. You raised, now in August, you raised 14 million through a warrant TO6, which was used to only 68%. What's that, a disappointment?
I think you can always be disappointed about these things. I think we all know that the biotech market has been pretty tough. So I think that's a fair reflection of sort of the availability of cash in the market. We are of course in a situation where we believe that the current shareholders they should have the opportunity to benefit from the data in January, and we are funded well enough to move us through that inflection point, and then we have.
Sorry again, you are funded enough
to ensure that we read out data in January and move beyond that, and also therefore to give the current shareholders that upside in the current stock.
All right. So the milestone we are waiting for is the top line data from phase 2 in January.
Definitely.
Definitely. And you practically already said it will be good.
I said that we are very encouraged by the data so far. I don't think I said that it would be good for sure, but I'm very positive.
All right. And after January, what to expect then?
Yeah, but we are in discussions with various pharma and big biotech companies to ensure that we can out-license mitazalimab on the best terms. But I think there is a truth in you need to have your optionality. So we are preparing to move and continue developing mitazalimab. We cannot just sort of end phase 2 and then stop and have mitazalimab sit on a shelf. So we are working continuously with the regulators, with our manufacturing, with our key opinion leaders to ensure that we continue to build in value in mitazalimab and keep our development options open for the molecule.
All right. So the data in January will be the base that you go on to seek license partners with.
You can say there's a number of license partners that are very interested based on the data that we have so far, but of course that's the data that will sort of hammer the nail on the head and probably make the deal executable.
Right. Søren, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And